Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your patience, and thanks for joining us for this virtual live Boulder Startup Week session on cohesive marketing. My name is Ben Travis. I'm this year's marketing track captain, as well as marketing manager at Bonusly here in Boulder. And this year's Startup Week is a little bit different than past years, so we're adapting through a 100% digital event with a theme of service to community. So this session will be uploaded to YouTube for reference in the future. Just so you know. And then before we start, I'd also like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. So many thanks to Techstars, Honey, Name.com, Downtown Boulder Partnership, and CU for their sponsorship of Boulder Startup Week. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. And now I'd like to hand things over to Mark Howells. I've known Mark for a couple years now. We meet a lot at the Boulder Marketers Meetup. So I know you're all in for a treat. He is the chief strategist and founder of Dakota Ridge Marketing. So yeah, Mark, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Ben. Let me just share my screen here.
Got it. And just a quick reminder, everyone, you can use the chat and the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen, and that'll be a great way for us to keep in contact. And also at the end of this session, we'll be sharing a handout, so be on the lookout for that in the chat.
Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to bring up the chat. There we go. All righty. So hi, everyone. Mark Howells, as Ben said. Just to give you a little background on myself before I get started, I have about 15 years experience in digital marketing. Started early on in kind of the trenches, doing content, blog side of things, website content, and then graduated, I'll say, to analytics, automation, more technical aspects, and then moved on from there into strategy. And actually founded Dakota Ridge Marketing a number of years ago. And yeah, just wanted to jump right in. Give me a second. So housekeeping, thank you, first of all, for joining. I really appreciate you, taking the time to learn and spend time with Startup Week. As Ben said, this will be recorded. And when we get into the workshop portion, just at the end, I'm going to be asking you some questions to try and make it a little more interactive. And if you could just answer in chat, you can direct that, directly to the panelists, or open it up to everyone if you'd like. There will be, as Ben said, a Q&A at the end. And then also, I wanted to offer a handout, which will have a link at the end in the chat that you can download it from. Also, we'll try, I believe, to email it out to you after the session. That's meant to be kind of an extension of the workshop. So just to give you a little more information after this session. So here's the agenda. Just wanted to cover, first of all, the goals of the webinar, just what I'm hoping you guys get out of this today. Cohesive marketing, going into more around, what it is, how you can learn more about it and actually implement it in your businesses. And then also just some information on the why, which is always the question of why should I spend the time doing this? And then jumping into a paradigm shift as needed. So we've worked with a number of startups, and we do get some feedback on the startup side of things if this is actually needed. So I wanted to shift your mindset as needed. And then, as I said, at the end, get into a workshop, hopefully just giving you kind of the first steps of cohesive marketing, and so you can really get an idea of the process, if you will. So here's the goals for the webinar. I'm hoping these are the outcomes for you, really, to understand the steps and guidelines around cohesive marketing. Number two, to see the benefits of cohesive marketing, and hopefully you kind of gain the motivation out of this to take it back to your businesses and implement a stronger marketing foundation for your startup. And then number three, today, to really kind of lay the first cornerstones of a great or strong foundation through the workshop pieces, so you kind of see really what to do and how to actually implement it, as I said. So to start up and get into cohesive marketing, I wanted to kind of get everyone on the same page to start off. So just to define the word cohesive again, is really to be logically connected and work together as a united whole. So when we talk about it in relation to marketing, cohesive marketing is really logically connecting, your business aspects, audience targeting, branding, goals, campaigns, and tools. And by that, I normally mean software tools. So your marketing and really ultimately your business can perform better overall. So it's really the idea of bringing it all together. So where did this methodology come from? As I said at the beginning, I have the 15 years experience, but that was across B2B, B2C, all different companies. And really, I saw a lot of issues or pain points. So erratic branding. I actually worked for an athletic apparel company and went to the management and said, we need better branding, because if you don't have that better branding, audiences are defining your positioning and defining how they see your company in their brains. You want to be the one obviously controlling that and driving that. Audience segmentation, a lot of companies and especially startups just kind of focus on one audience and use generic messaging that really only resonates with a small number of people, as opposed to segmenting out their audiences as well as their messaging. Personalization, that's sometimes a newer expectation or feature for a lot of companies, especially startups. It's something that's really important, but most companies are doing kind of a first name and an email or something like that as personalization, and not getting to the stage of pulling it into their website and creating personalized web pages, et cetera, for people. But it's really powerful, as we'll get into. The fourth one is really the biggest one that I've seen, is most companies have this kind of campaign mindset or strategy of throwing it up against the wall and seeing what sticks. And they just say, okay, we're going to try this channel and that channel and go from there. And then lastly, open goals. A lot of times, overall, I've seen this where there's high level goals. There's kind of like this generic goal of we need to sell more, whatever it is that you have, a product service, as opposed to really getting down deep into the goal sets, the metrics, and also managing that on a certain cadence or a regular basis. So that's where really the methodology of cohesive marketing came from, is these pain points, if you will. And to jump into now, what is cohesive marketing as far as a methodology here. Step one is really make sure you have all the pieces of a strong foundation built, okay? With Dakota Ridge, we have this 8-week program that we work with companies with, and it covers really all these different categories, but the main piece that I wanted you to get out of this is, you can see in week 5, there are campaigns. So again, a lot of companies jump right into campaigns and they say, we need social media, we need SEO, what have you. But as you can see there's a lot of work prior to that step. Pulling together the target audiences and your branding, and how are you going to message to these people in the campaigns. So it's really that idea of building it all together as a foundational aspect. Step 2 is using the pieces to support and build other pieces. So we put together this, I kind of term it like a subway map, if you will, that shows all the different pieces of what we do. But the idea here is really, the main lines are the main categories. And for example, if you look top left there, you need a personality to build out your brand voice, right? But the small lines are kind of showing that across these different categories, things need to intertwine and work cohesively as well. So give you an example, on the right side is key messaging. When you're messaging out to your target audiences, a lot of that needs to go into that. It's not just, what are the features of your product or your service? But for example, you need to know your personality and your brand voice to be part of that messaging, but you also need to know your competitive landscape and your unique value proposition in order to differentiate against your competitors. So just really the idea of looking at what needs to support other pieces. And then in step 3, as you implement, so you've built the foundation and then you're actually implementing, meaning you're running campaigns, you're putting this all together. This is something I see a lot of companies struggle with, is checking against that strong foundation. So at Dakota Ridge, we have a client portal, and it's always accessible to clients, so they can go back and see all the information that they've built as part of the foundation. So many companies have this kind of build it and put it on the shelf mindset, especially for branding. We have our brand guidelines, it's up on the shelf, done, we never look at it again. That idea of continuously going back and checking against, your key messaging, for example, making sure that those messages are intertwined with all of your campaign messaging, that's an important piece to make sure. If you decrease over time, that's fine, because you get to know that foundation, and as you build your company, you can absolutely do that. But the idea, again, is just to check and recheck against the foundation. And lastly, step 4, make updates following a cadence. So you've built your foundation, you're implementing it. Now going forward, create a cadence around your business in order to make these different updates, because you don't sit in a bubble, right? You have competition moving, your industry is changing, everything's always shifting around you. So set up a cadence of updates, and this is one that we put together as a general one, but you can see there's weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually updates that can be made in order to, again, keep up to date on all of these different pieces, these foundational pieces. So really, what's the goal of all this? There's a lot of different examples, but really in general, it's to get it all working in unison, as I said earlier. To give you 2 examples, audience segmentation. That's a strategy that helps to guide your target audience selection, which helps multi-channel selection, right? Which channels are you going to be on? And then that ultimately, drives your segmented messaging. So it's going to resonate more with those segmented audiences, which lowers your customer acquisition cost and increases your revenue. So there's a lot of pieces there working together in order to really get you to your goals. And then second example is in relation to goals, just goal management. Your campaigns need to go kind of back up the river, if you will, and align with both your marketing and your overall business goals. I've seen so many times, a campaign goal is like, we want to sell more widgets, right? That's the goal of the campaign, just sell more stuff. But if you sell more widgets in that one campaign, how does that affect your overall business goals? As compared to saying, okay, we're trying to make, 1 million in annual revenue, that equals how many widgets overall, based on your current conversion rate, that's 1,000 extra widgets that we need to be selling. And, this campaign specifically needs to bring in 25,000 new people to our website based on our conversion rate in order to do that. So it's really aligning everything top to bottom and saying, okay, this is the one metric for this campaign, and this connects up with our business goals in this way. So I wanted to also give you a little data. At Dakota Ridge, and especially myself, I just believe data is truth in a way. And this is really kind of, there's a lot more pieces to this, but I wanted to dilute this down to 4 main areas. And this really answers to me, why should you put in the time and effort here? So brand consistency is something that I see a lot of startups kind of saying, don't worry, we have a brand, we'll do it later, or something like that. But really, as a startup, you're positioned against larger companies, and branding will help you, absolutely. This top piece is what the current state of brand consistency is, where 95% of companies have branding guidelines, 9% report brand consistency. That's a huge gap. And B2B is actually worse than B2C. I found this data that Boeing created its first ever formal brand strategy in 2000. They were founded in 1916. So just, it's tough to do and really get this consistency together. But as you see at the bottom here, the average revenue increase attributed to brand consistency is 23% increase in revenue overall. So there's a good reason, I'll say, to put this together. Segmentation, this was a channel specific example. So just for email campaigns, a lot of people, use this kind of one size fits all method. If you can segment your email campaigns, you have the data around it based on, what people are doing on your website, et cetera, 760% increase in revenue, drastic shift there. And then overall, just in general, from a segmentation perspective, 10% increase in annual profit growth versus companies who don't use segmentation effectively. And then personalization, I really like this chart at the top, having worked with a number of different e-commerce brands where, we know that we're shooting at times for like 2-3% as far as our purchase rate or conversion rate there. But looking at that, I mean, the hockey stick growth on the right, and this is basically showing page views. We all know that the more pages somebody looks at, the higher chance that they're going to convert because they're obviously interested in your company. But if you look at that non-personalized page views chart versus personalized page views, huge drastic difference there. And the number at the bottom, 53% of marketers have seen a 10% or more increase in revenue just by actually using personalization. And then the last example of just kind of why should you be doing this is with goal management. This, again, is just amazing to me that 80% of small businesses don't track their business goals. I'm sure this data includes, kind of mom and pop shops or smaller businesses. But overall, amazing number there. No matter if you use OKRs or KPIs or whatever goal method you use, 15% increase in revenue when your goals are set and managed. And then now I want to get into kind of the paradigm shift piece. And I talked about it earlier, but we've talked to different startups, and these are the two kind of pieces, I'll say, or feedback we get as far as the block of why should I be doing this? Why should I get into this level? I just need to jump into some campaigns right now, get some new ads up on Facebook, what have you. So that's too detailed for a startup. I absolutely understand, that your product or service is the main focus of your startup. And normally you're developing your technology or, putting together the infrastructure needed around whatever your core offering is. But really, when you think about it, you need the awareness, you need the adoption of people to get anywhere with your startup. So taking that extra time, now to put together a strong foundation around your marketing, to me, is going to achieve, that awareness, that adoption, that revenue that's going to get you to your goal faster. And we're going to do Q&A at the end, but I do want to just quickly answer question on the chat. How do you personalize web pages for traffic? There's a lot of different options. Startup wise, normally, resources and money are a little tougher to come by. So Google Optimize is a nice free way. There are paid versions of it, but a nice free way to connect it up with your analytics and with your website. And it's a pretty cool tool where you can, create personalized web pages based off of that. So hopefully that answers your question. The other paradigm shift feedback that we see is, it's too early for us. I've heard that, recently. When I hear that, what I hear is, we're fine with ineffective, inefficient marketing, where we waste time and money on campaigns before we get to a certain size or before we get to a certain revenue amount, or get funding is a big one. When we get funding, we'll have the team, we'll go from there. To me, though, time and money is usually a limited resource in the startup world. So again, this to me is the perfect time as you're in the early stages of your company's life cycle to pull this together, to work on the pieces, to develop that strong foundation and go from there. So now let's get into this kind of workshop setup. I wanted to make this as interactive as I could in this digital setup. When we work with clients, we do discovery calls and market research, and like I said earlier, it's an 8-week program, and it has 28 different deliverables as part of that. So I was like, okay, how can I pull this together and help people out and kind of give them something to run with for after the call? And so what I did was kind of abridge the whole process and discovery down a lot to go through just a number of different areas, so you can kind of see how this works, how running through it in relation to the first 2 steps actually of cohesive marketing would work, and get some feedback from you and get you guys starting to think about these pieces as related to your startups. So For the setup side of things, you can add more later with research, whether that's first party, if you're going to talk to prospective customers or customers that you already have. Third party research goes a lot into these different areas to make sure you understand your competitors, your industry. The worksheet PDF, as I said, we'll put up the link so you can download it, and I believe somebody from Boulder Startup Week will email this out after if we can get that set up. What I'm going to do is ask you 1 to 2 discovery questions for each step and give you about 30 seconds, something like that, to answer them in the chat. As I said, you can just send them to me privately or to panelists, or you can absolutely open it up. Just wanted to have everyone kind of interact. And then after that, I'll ask you for each step a thought-provoking, hopefully rhetorical question that of course you don't need to answer, but really to show you how the pieces link up, which is the whole idea of this cohesive marketing methodology. So it's not just things are in a box, when you think about your competitors, this is what they do, okay, done. It's how does that affect all these other different pieces of the marketing foundation that I'm putting together. So first one is goal management. So with goal management, we use OKRs. You may have heard of these. It's like KPIs kind of on steroids, I think of it. It's basically objectives and key results. It started, Peter Drucker, kind of the father of management, started it way back in the 40s or 50s. And a guy, I think, brought it to Intel, and then he went into Google and they took it on, and now it's, Google, Facebook, Amazon, et cetera, are the ones using it now. The reason that we use it and I like it is really it just aligns again with those overall business objectives. Usually you're going to want to, if you're using OKRs, shoot for both internal and external objectives. So it's not just we want to reach this sales goal, or we want to do this. It's also we want to build a team. We want to get funding, what have you. You're going to look for a max of 5 objectives, just to give you a little guidelines. We'll try and get to 1 for today, of course. And then for the key results, it's normally a max of 3 to 5 per objective. And just, as a lot of people ask, well, how do I manage this? Because we talked about goal management. A couple of good tools I've seen recently are Perdoo, P-E-R-D-O-O, and Week Done, I think, are 2 of them that kind of set you up in this normal management process of the OKRs. So with all that said, thinking about your startup from a qualitative view, what's the most important main factor over the next quarter that will help support your mission and your company growth? So I'll give you 20, 30 seconds, just throw it in chat. All right, so we see some coming through here. Getting a lead funnel going, absolutely. List growth, it's kind of lead funnel. Data enrichment, absolutely. And to give you a couple examples, thank you for that. It could be as general as successfully launching a new feature, improving customer satisfaction, lowering your customer acquisition cost, something like that. Marketing qualified leads. Okay, great. And just to remember, in relation to this, on the objective level, it's qualitative. So on the quantitative side, that's the key results. So if you're actually getting something specific like this number of people doing that or what have you, that's going to be on your key results side of things. So this is just general kind of qualitative goals, but a perfect lead in. On the quantitative side, if you think about that goal that you just put in, what's one metric that's going to support achievement of the objective that you just answered? And this could be, examples, get 2,000 new signups, or, exceed a net promoter score of 8.0 if you're looking for customer satisfaction. or increase, return on ad spend by 50% if you're looking to lower your customer acquisition costs. So it's just linking up those two. If you guys want to throw that into chat. So we've got some examples of demonstrating traction and then getting 5 paying customers on board for that. Thousand email addresses from qualified leads. It's a good one. So it's always numerical. And as I said, the 3 to 5 pieces pull that together and push that up to the overall objective. And one other thing as we're going through this, just if you're using OKRs, again, it's always good to have your different business levels brought into that. So depending on with startups, the size you are, but if you're trying to get kind of business level, and then if you do have teams, team level, and then personal level, that's always a great way to kind of align everything top to bottom. Great, so we're gonna move on now. Next step, competitive landscape, right? So we've got our goals set up. Looking at the competitive landscape, I think this is really important for startups because you're obviously getting going, and competition is a big piece of, not only when you've come up with your idea, who is doing it out there, or is it a new category that you're trying to build? But really your target audiences, they have choices, whether they're direct or indirect competitors. So in order to differentiate and really hold a unique, position, again, back to positioning in their minds, you have to analyze your competition. It's not a, question of doing it. So in relation to the workshop, think about your top competitor. Hopefully you've already, looked around and seen kind of what the lay of the land is from your competitive standpoint. Thinking about your top competitor, for the people who buy from your top competitor, what's the main reason that they do so? I'll give you a few seconds, put that in chat again. And a couple examples, it could be service, service level, their pricing, obviously could be an example, their set of features, their marketing, the relationships they've built in the industry, could be very specific reason. Okay, we've got, I like lack of awareness of options. That's obviously a great lead into, your marketing. Quality of their product, their branding and messaging, perfect. Awareness, so awareness is coming up a lot. Existing relationships, feature set, name recognition. So a lot of kind of branding, awareness, messaging, which is obviously why you guys are, interested in the marketing side of things, getting out there, perceived strength based on time and market. Very nice. So in relation to those answers, what would convince your target audience to switch to your company from that competitor? Could that be, your level of experience, your speed is something to think about, groundbreaking technology? Is it just, a lot of you answered awareness. Is it just getting out there, getting in front of them? Better service, point of contact, yeah. This is a tougher one, definitely. Feature development, integrations, okay. Current lack of other options. I like that answer about, someone answered branding is for women, ours is unisex. So kind of looking at the segmentation of audiences and seeing how you're pushing your brand there. Better service backed by strategy, nice. So leading those answers into my first kind of rhetorical question, and again, this is just to get you thinking about the cohesive marketing side of things. we've looked at your goals, and now we've talked about the competitive landscape. Can that switch trait, I'll call it, that aspect that would hopefully move them or push them towards switching, can that somehow be tracked as a key result, again, numerical, to link up to your overall business objectives? So is that, and again, this is just one small piece of the puzzle, but is that something that you can actually track and therefore show that movement towards taking away customers from your competitors there? So target audiences is the next step. We've looked at goals and our competitive landscape. So now we need to look at who are we actually targeting here. From a guideline perspective, normally you're looking at a max of 5 segmented audiences based on the demographics, geographics, the psychographics, or the why they buy. And if you're B2B, firmographics as well, things like size of the company, location, et cetera. Normally there's a good amount of first and third party research in this step. So that's something that you can, if you haven't done this, you can go down that route after. The stages of this is normally segmenting audiences based around attitudes and usage research, or A&U research, and then connecting that up with their features, because you'll normally, as you start to do this market research, start to see trends. People, in this location or demographic type or what have you, have certain attitudes and usage around your industry, your category, your products. So in relation to all that, the question for you is, who has a problem that can be solved by using your product or service, but may not be aware there is a solution. So a few of you talked about awareness. Examples, millennial mothers. There's an example. People who are on Slack all day. People who like hot sauce. People in their 70s who take long vacations. Who could be a specific segmented audience. And again, this is obviously jumping down the road a bit without any research, but hopefully you guys have done some research on the target audiences for your startups. So just interested in relation to what we've answered so far, who you are targeting. I'll give you a few seconds for that. And it looks like some people are putting their answers in the Q&A section. If we could keep it to the chat for this, and then we'll get into the Q&A at the end. So we've got one, HR and employee experience leaders. People who want a more simplified yet effective skincare routine, people who care about clean, high quality. So it's going to be more on the psychographic side of why do they buy. That's great. All right, so to keep moving forward, in relation to those answers, just wanted to go through again a rhetorical question. Once you have those audiences built out and those features, do they pass the rules of segmentation? Okay, so the 4 rules here: size, is each segment large enough to justify the cost of your marketing to them? Similarity, is each person, based on their features, again, demographics, what have you, similar to each other in the audience, but unique from other audiences, because you really want to make sure you kind of put them in their correct buckets. And then the third being marketing. We'll get to the marketing plan, but to connect it up to that, will the strategies that you come up with for your marketing plan suffice for that whole audience when you're specifically targeting them? And then accessibility, is each segment accessible to the marketing that you're planning? So you want to make sure once you kind of go through this process of setting up your segmented audiences, that they pass these rules of segmentation here. And then branding. Again, really important, as I said earlier. This, from a startup perspective, it's again really important just because I think it affects the positioning, as I talked about earlier. But the cool thing is you can compete on aspects like value instead of just price and features, which is the main thing that we go to when we're competing. It really amplifies your marketing, any marketing that you're doing. And the goal of this is really to become a part of your customers' lives. It's to, have and build that relationship. Like, all of us on here are kind of, staunch supporters of Apple or Google, for example, and we feel really strongly about that. That's what you're shooting for, is that love of your brand. Today, we're just going to focus on brand personality. So if you were to describe your business as a person, how would you describe them? And this is pulled from brand personality spectrum, which the whole thing is going to be in the handout, and you don't have to use these, but just, in general, is your brand, more friendly, or is it more corporate? Is it, spontaneous, or is it more calculated? Are you accessible to all, or are you very upscale and, focused on specific people? I'll give you 20 seconds, what have you, to add it into chat. And Laura, just to answer your question, it's probably because people are just directing it to the panelists. So that's probably why you don't see everything. All right, so we have one answer of aggressively friendly and inclusive. I love that, aggressively friendly. So that's somebody, you could really make a friend of, right? You want to build that relationship, and that brand is aggressively friendly, like that. Accessible, down to earth, friendly and spontaneous. And I love that. Funny to see our competition dressing down at events to match our personality. It's great. And then we have opposite, upscale, educational, purposefully friendly. It's great, spontaneous. So it's just, again, thinking about the brand side of things. How are you going to build those relationships? And then I came up with 3 rhetorical questions here, and this is, again, starting to really link it up to all the pieces and push this cohesive marketing aspect. Does it reflect your company values, right? That's an important piece of this. Does it connect with people inside your startup? You may have a small team, but it's important as you build and grow that the personality of your brand aligns with these people, because you want them, passionate about what you're doing and coming to work excited every day. And then does it resonate with your target audiences? Obviously, one of the big pieces to the marketing side of things. Again, you want to build that, relationship with people. They have to think of your brand as a friend, if you will, as a relationship build around trust, and the positioning in their mind has to resonate with them, so they will actually go and buy whatever you're selling. And then let's get into messaging now. So we've got a lot of kind of features built so far. Key messaging is, as you may have heard of or used, it's a set of messages separate to each target audience that they need to intertwine throughout all your marketing. And this is when I was talking about earlier, going back and checking it. This is one of the big areas. So all those campaigns you're doing, and if you have a marketing team or you're doing it yourself, you want to keep going back to your key messages, normally 3 to 6 key messages for each segmented audience. Today we're going to focus on one. With that, what's the most important message you want to tell the target audience about your product or service? So if you think about that target audience before, what do you want to tell them? Is that we alleviate a pain point? Is that about your customer service, or the proprietary process you have? And I see we have about 8 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of speed up here. Give people a couple seconds just to throw something in chat if you would like to. And as you're thinking about that, I will just keep going. So the rhetorical questions around this are, based on your top competitor, whatever you were thinking about as that main message you want to tell people, is it unique, right? And it doesn't have to be unique at all. But the one thing that we always talk with clients about is, always include your UVP, your unique value proposition, in your key messages somewhere, right? Because you want to be messaging that, whatever that is. And then does it connect with the goals, needs, wants of your target audience? Obviously, that's one of the main points of messaging. And then channels and tactics. This is really the biggest step of this whole process. Putting a strong foundation together around this. This is basically the marketing plan. We just call it channels and tactics. It's really defining the channels and tactics used for your funnel, for your customer journey, to reach each target audience, to nurture them, convert them for whatever conversion event is for you. So you're thinking about all of that and how it, using all these pieces that we've talked about so far in your foundation, is all pulled together. So the question is there an industry or competitor related channel that you've seen being beneficial for them that could work for you as well? Obviously, again, one small aspect of pulling together a full marketing plan, but just wanted to throw that out there. Is it connected TV or OTT advertising, or LinkedIn lead forms, or geofenced mobile ads in a specific location? Is there something that you've seen working for other competitors or again in your industry? I'll give you a couple seconds. Is there something that you're interested to jump into, and from a channel perspective, that you aren't using right now? Okay, we've got Facebook ads. It's one of definitely the bigger ones out there, of course. Webinars, expos, and magazine sponsorships. All right, and to move on, just the questions about this to think about, again, that cohesive aspect. Does this channel, align with where your target audience spends time? That's one of the big things. Hopefully you've spent the time to put together, personas around the target audiences that you've built out, to really understand who they are, their interests, their, desires, their pain points, what have you. Where are they spending time? And I see YouTube, Instagram, et cetera, content email strategy. Great. Second question is there a lot of competition on that channel from your top competitor that we talked about? And this could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? They could be just, splashing the market. They've got all the audience on there, what have you. It's going to be tough to pull people away from that. Or that could be a good thing, depending on the channel again. That your target audience is there in droves, and there's an opportunity there. And the third one, does this channel make sense given your objectives? So aligning that back up with the goal management side of things, looking at your channels, is this all going to align to whatever your company's mission is, whatever your overall goals are? And then last but not least, implementation timeline. So after you plan out your channels and tactics, this is, to me, so important on developing a timeline that makes sense strategically to actually implement that plan. Your timeline should absolutely connect up with so many different aspects. You got to think about your industry climate, your team. Do you have the funds available? What channels to spin up first versus waiting? Competitive shifts if competitors are moving fast in a certain area. Product or service launches or updates that you're making. So it's really thinking about all these aspects and using your marketing plan or your channels and tactics and pulling that apart and kind of saying, okay, where do things fit in here? So for the channel that you've previously answered, when would it make sense to add that into the mix? Is that going to be, somebody said YouTube, okay, that's tough to do potentially if you want to pull together a whole, video studio or something like that. Is it this month? Is it in the next quarter? Is it, you need 6 months to really be ready for this? Ben, thank you, said expos. Well, not now, so that's got to go in the timeline plan, but that's obviously going to be further down. So it's really pulling together when these things can come in and align with all those aspects from your strategy. And then the two rhetorical questions, will this timing affect your business objectives in any way? So how does that align up to your overall goals? And does the timing align with your target audiences with respect to their demographic or geographic features? So this could be, for example, seasonality could be something that you want to look at and make sure that's that everything's aligned there. So last few slides here, as I see we have a couple minutes only left. What we went through today was really first two steps, obviously very high level and just kind of some of the pieces, but once you build that foundation, and I just want to reiterate this, and build out the pieces and help support others, going forward, you're going to check against that foundation over and over to make sure that everything you're doing is actually in alignment with your foundation. And then step 4, make updates following a cadence, as I said, because a lot of those pieces, like if you're doing a SWOT analysis or that competitive landscape that we talked about, things change. You need to absolutely stay up to date with it and keep things moving forward. And with that, thank you so much for your time. And I see we have 1 minute on the clock, so I just made it. There is my contact information. And Ben just put the worksheet link in the chat. Actually, at the bottom of that worksheet is my email. So I apologize, on timing here, because I know there's another marketing session right after that. But if you would like to email me, there it is on the screen or on the handout, as I said. With any questions that you have about this, please don't hesitate to do so. But thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. I really appreciate you sharing the framework here and also providing the interactive workshop. I know it's a little bit different than in person, but I appreciate everyone being flexible and chiming in. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I honestly don't know if this is going to shut the meeting down or not. I hope it doesn't, and you can continue with the Q&A. But for now, I'm going to stop recording, and then hopefully it will persist a little bit longer so you can answer some questions, but just want to give everyone a quick heads up that it may shut down. We also have 2 more marketing sessions right after this, and then more later this week, so be sure to check those out.